If you are an artist, a maker, and you're teaching online, you've been told you need to show up more on social media. And it's true, you need to go where your students are in order to tell them you have a thing, right? The problem is that showing up on social media is not equally easy or safe for everyone. This conversation explores that tension between authenticity and visibility and boundaries. This is a snippet of conversation with Chase Harpole from the Creatives on Camera podcast. I'm Lyric from the Academy for Virtual Teaching. Let's listen in. So many of our people, social media is just, it feels like a chore. It feels like a grind
Yeah.
when you're using it to market your business, but it doesn't have to be. So I'm curious how you feel about it and what your system is.
When you can show yourself on social media, you get the most like return on that. And I say return because that sounds transactional, but that's like what I'm negotiating is like how much of myself am I willing to put on this in order to like get something financially in return. And it feels a little bit like a deal with the devil in some ways, like a literal deal with the devil of like, oh, I have to like put myself out there and like do this little dance in order to have my work be seen. And a part of me is like, I don't know if I feel safe doing that. And so it feels in some ways like a gradual of like dipping in the toe of like allowing myself as a person to be seen on social media. And it's scary. And I hope that like once I figure out how to do that in a way that it feels like my own boundaries are being respected, then it's going to feel a little bit more efficient to actually create. But that's kind of like the barrier that I'm experiencing right now.
And it's a very common one, right? Because we think we have to look a certain way or be a certain way on social media, and Instagram has a reputation for being that way. But hey, people, did you know you can curate your feed? You can actually choose to block and look at spend your attention on different things, so that your social media is uplifting instead of otherwise. And authenticity is such a beautiful thing when it comes across, when you think of the people that you really connect with on social media. I would wager to bet that it's 90% people who are their real selves, people who you can relate to instead of, this fake, or it's they're so far above that I can't even relate, right? That's not what, as creative entrepreneurs, we want to create. And it is a thing to protect, right? And let's talk about that for a minute, because there are those of us, I'm an older white woman. I have like nothing to lose by putting it all out on social media. But there are communities that are on the margins of society where if they are their true authentic self, it's not as safe for them, right? So there is that. I can see your hesitation there. And it's a completely valid and good reason, right? To be hesitant about putting your whole self out there.
And I think another part of it is that there's so little representation for a lot of these marginal groups, including queer folk. So I can only really talk about queer folk because I am white and like male presenting and largely like so I have a lot of privilege in that. But as like a queer person that is like marginal, there's not a ton of representation for authenticity within that group. And so what I've experienced and heard from other queer creators as well is that when you do that, people like latch on to that, especially people that belong in that group. And they project onto it what it is they need. because there's so little representation, they don't feel seen in the specific ways that like larger major groups feel. And so they create like parasocial relationships with you that can feel really uncomfortable and can be difficult to like navigate. And there is like a true
Boundaries.
yeah, definitely. And it's a true like skill to be able to navigate that. And it can also be like very emotionally exhausting depending on how people latch on to that. So that's part of it too, is like, in the past having people develop these parasocial relationships with me and not really being sure how to like navigate them in a way that feels uh productive to me and like safe to me and like without being like super like mean to the person that's like latched on to me and to be like, well, you don't know me.
Right.
So, I think that, like, I'm fortunate that I don't get a lot of hate.
Good.
I think also, like, weirdly, it's easier for me to deal with hate than it is for me to deal with, like, the person that's, like, being parasocially, inappropriate.
So, what did you think? It really is different for a marginalized community to show up authentically in places where they're not always welcome. So, how do you find that balance? Tell me what social media is like for you. How do you feel about that tension between being real and, protecting what you need to protect? Leave comments. Let's have a conversation. And as always, you are invited to join the free community at the Academy for Virtual Teaching. We are makers, teachers who are figuring all of this stuff out together. And we'd love to have you join the conversation there too. As always, never stop creating, my friend. What you do makes a better. As always, never stop creating, never stop teaching what you do. It really does make the world a better place. We'll see you soon.